Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Awesome in Seattle podcast. This is your host, Christian Nossum with the Awesome Nossum Group at Wilson Realty, and today I am joined with...
That was a lot of words.
So fast. I got a lot of coffee in me today, guys. I have my beautiful wife.
Hello.
The wonderful Shannon Nossum.
It is I.
And we're interviewing Joanna Beecher, who is on the Awesome Nossum Group.
It's actually not true.
I'm interviewing.
She's interviewing us, really, yes. Okay, so we're passing the torch to her. She's going to be interviewing us. And she is going to be talking about what, Shannon?
She's going to be talking about flipping a house. So we've flipped some houses. Joanna is thinking about flipping a house. And so today we are going to talk about all of the important and common questions that people ask when they're going to flip a house for the very first time. And so if you have ever considered flipping a house, or you're just kind of interested in house flipping, or maybe you flipped a few and you want to just see what our input is, then stay tuned and hear all of the common questions that people ask when they're thinking about flipping a house.
I have so many.
I do want to say, Joanna and I have never, ever been on a podcast together. I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe once, but it's very rare because typically if I'm with Christian,
maybe
either
once.
You're with Christian or I'm with Christian, and we're rarely together because we usually have
130 something plus episodes, and you guys have never been on together. This is weird.
Right? Maybe
we're not going to be able
one.
to talk at all. We're just going to be.
I know. Clearly, I'm like trying to fit
Christian,
in here and there.
bye. Okay, here we go. Let's get started.
You just get out.
Right.
Yeah.
I do want to preface this first. We are not the biggest. There's obviously in the Seattle area some absolutely incredible flippers.
Yeah.
Who are mentors of mine. They've flipped hundreds and hundreds of homes. We have not flipped hundreds of homes. We've done a handful. We've helped a lot of clients flip homes, and we're
kind of experts because we were just on a TV show.
Oh my gosh!
Yes. So therefore, we are a worldwide sensation.
Yes, our life's about to change. We won't be able to go get Starbucks without the paparazzi.
Yes.
No, I'm just
Fun
kidding.
times.
And to say it, we should. Say
it is kind of. It's kind of cool. We were just on TV. Yeah.
On A&E's $1 Million Zombie Flips. It was pretty cool. So
it's very exciting. And honestly, from someone who's never flipped and works with you guys on a regular basis, I think you're the perfect people for me to ask these questions to. So that's why I want to do it.
What questions you got? Start firing them away.
Here we go. Okay. All right. First things first, when you're buying a home in general, even a flip, you want to know what your budget is. So what is my budget for purchasing and renovating a property?
That is a great question. So first thing I think before that is, what is your buy box? As in, what can you afford to buy as your flip? And I think the way that you figure that out is either how much cash do you have? So let's say you're using, a lot of people who are first-time flippers are using equity from like a previous real estate transaction, or they're using, what's it called? HELOC, to access equity that they have in a property, and they're using that as their down payment. Or, which is what we did at the beginning, and maybe you might do this, I don't know, they have a money partner. So they have someone else who is going to provide the cash to be able to fund the project. So how much cash you actually have for down payment is going to be a real big determiner of what you can actually afford. Typically, when you're getting a hard money loan, which is the way you might finance, which we can talk about,
most likely
you'll want about 20% of the purchase price of the property.
And so when you get that hard money loan, you'll put that down payment down. They will usually fund the rehab costs. So let's say you're buying a house for $700,000, you're putting 20% down. They're going to give you, let's say, $150,000 or $200,000 or whatever, $75,000, whatever your number is for the budget. And that will kind of determine, like, hey, how much can you qualify for? With a hard money loan, it's more dependent on the actual property.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the ARV, meaning the after repaired value of the property? And you kind of work backwards based on that.
Yeah. So if you, let's say you have, and help me with this math, let's say you have 200,000, which is great. You want to look at, I can use this 200,000 as a down payment.
That'd be $1 million purchase.
But you
Solid.
actually have a little bit less than that, because while you're actually flipping the house, you have to pay for the monthly interest on the loan.
This is important to know.
Yeah.
Because
so you don't want to use
I
up
think we
all
forget
the
about
money.
that.
You don't want to use up all your money on the down payment. And then they're like, okay, now where is our interest payments? So you're going to want to talk to the hard money lender, find out what this looks like, and then how much money you have. That'll equate to what kind of a purchase price you can do.
Okay. Follow-up question.
Yep.
Where do you find hard money lenders?
Great question. So there are a few really good ones. So we're currently in the Seattle area.
Yes.
So in the Seattle area, there are some really good ones. There's also some shady ones. So you want to make sure that you do your due diligence. They can always reach out to us and we will recommend some people based on your situation and what you're trying to do. Some are great at funding dadu construction as well as the rehab. Some of them don't do that. Some lean more towards doing, just the rehab, just doing a flip.
Yeah, and I would say if you're thinking about flipping, we're happy to send you kind of our favorite hard money lenders that we have used or that our clients have used. And they're all going to be different. Sometimes they're going to it's going to be hard for them to tell you exactly the numbers until you have a deal in place. Because hard money lenders don't care as much about what your situation is. They don't care about your W-2. They don't care about
your credit
necessarily all these things. They care more about the deal. And so you can get ballparks from them, like how much approximately is your interest, or how much usually do you have people put down, or let's say a scenario like this, and it's 20% down, 10% interest, 2 points. Points are what you have to pay
for the loan up front.
So 2% of the purchase price. And then they can give you a ballpark of what that monthly payment might be at that purchase price. So,
that said, sometimes the lender will also allow you to wrap the monthly payments into that loan amount. It really just,
we have done that.
You could go a million different ways with this. So it's hard to give you an exact answer.
Right.
That's called interest reserves. So if you wrap in the monthly payment, but often when you're first starting, they're not going to let you do that.
Okay.
Unless you have a partner that's experienced and they're also on the loan. But
so this is a hack that you can use, is partnering with someone that does have experience, because hard money lenders will give you better rates, give you better terms if you are experienced. So if you're a first-time flipper, you're probably going to save some money and a lot of headaches by partnering with someone that has experience versus trying to do it all on your own.
Yeah.
If you want to do it on your own, go for it. Just know that you're going to learn a lot of mistakes along the way, or you're going to have a lot of mistakes and learn from them, hopefully. And you're going to pay more for that hard money loan, just because that's the way it is.
yeah, I was going to say one more thing about shopping for a hard money lender while we're on that subject. Different ones do have different processes for the draws. So a draw is like when you get a certain percentage of the money. So if you have a $100,000 budget for rehab, you're going to take parts of that as the process goes.
Times.
So maybe I want $25,000 to pay the contractor. The hard money lenders have different methods for how they have you ask for that money, how difficult it is, how long it takes. And so these are questions to ask them to find out. Some
And the differences could be...
Yeah, I was going to say some have you just take a picture and they're like fine with that and describe what they're seeing. Some actually have people that come out to the property and look at it and want to see that. So that takes longer, obviously, to do it that way.
Yeah.
Yep. So it can be, that can extend how long you're going to have that project, which means they're making more money off your interest.
Yeah, that's not good.
No.
I don't
so
like
understanding
that.
this process and the pros and cons of what different lenders do, that's a good question to ask, is how does your draw process work?
Okay. Okay, good to know. You did bring up something called ARV. How do you determine your ARV on a project?
Fantastic question. So ARV stands for after repaired value. So that means, what is the property going to be worth after you rehab it? How you figure that out is, first, you have to understand what the area that you're buying in, what are the comps, meaning the comparable properties, what are they selling for? And not only what they are selling for, but what are they doing? Do they all have primary bathrooms with giant primary suites with attached bath, giant walk-in closet, all these things? Or is it just like it's a 2-bed, 1-bath, and everything in the area is a 2-bed, 1-bath? So I guess how I'm saying this is, or what I'm trying to say is, rehab the property to the comps in the neighborhood.
Right.
Don't overdo it. Don't underdo it. You gotta rehab the property to the comps and what they are saying.
Like, find out where the value is before you go too hard, essentially. Yeah.
We forgot an important step because we all do the job that we do. Your agent is supposed to really be a huge part of that process.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if you have an agent that's helping you when you're thinking about buying the flip, they are going to pull comps. They're going to tell you what the ARV is. They're hopefully going to tell you information about that. Like, hey, I noticed that, they all have open layouts. So are you able to do that, achieve that with this house? Or, XYZ scenarios that the house might need to have to reach a certain price point. But your agent is going to be, we are the agent, so we're talking as if how we're technically going to figure that out. Obviously, you as the investor need to do your own information. You need to look at it too. Yep. But your agent is going to be a huge thing to lean on and find out what they think and what they say the ARV is. But as far as on the agent side, when you're looking to comp a property, and if you're an investor and you're comping yourself, because you always want to double check, you're going to want to do a search based on the area, right? And then you're going to want to make sure that you are thinking about busy streets and things like that. Because if you're on like a double yellow line street,
that's a busy street.
That's a totally different comp than like a side street. So you want to find...
Or a cul-de-sac or something super quiet.
Yeah, you want to find homes that are really similar to the scenario that your house is in, similar square footage for what it's going to be, right? So maybe it's 1,000 square feet now, but you're finishing that basement off that's 800 square feet, and now it's going to be 1,800. You're looking at comps in that 1,800 range, and you want to find stuff that's nice because you're going to put out a nice product. So you want to see, what does a house look like that's been remodeled, and what does the price look like after it's been remodeled? So it's not always easy though in Seattle to find enough houses that are nice enough. And sometimes you have to go a little further back in time or a little further out in space or a little bigger, or a little smaller to try to find your comps.
Yeah. And I will add too, comping is much more of an art than it is a science.
100%.
Like, there is not a perfect comp out there unless you're in a condo, which the same stack, the same like 302 is the same as 202, which is the same as 102 because it's the same floor plan.
Could have a slightly different view.
Yeah, slightly different view, but not much.
Yeah,
it's
very
all
close.
Pretty much the same. But houses, even in these, like you go out to the suburbs and they build the same house like every third house, then you can maybe get away with that. You're going to find a better comp. But even then, you're going to have a little different yard and a little different location in the plat. Gut
check with your investor friends too. They're happy to like look at stuff. You're like, what do you think the ARV would be of this? And we're lucky. We're on a team, so we can always all look at stuff. But if you're just a single person, it's good to ask other people.
Yeah, good to find your flipper friends, investor friends. Yes. So when talking about comps, and talking about differences in some things, this is a good part to ask the question, what are some key factors to consider when you're looking to flip a house?
Key factors. So there's some things that are just super expensive to repair on a house. A really messed up foundation is going to be potentially very expensive. And so if you're not getting it for a price that factors that in, you might not want to take on that project.
I was going to say square footage is huge because flippers generally don't like to add on or go up. I know it seems like you should, especially in Seattle, these houses are little. Generally, they don't like to do that. Why? Is because permits.
Yep. The permit process can take forever.
Can take a really long time to add on, even if you're adding on like that main floor. If you're trying to go up though, you're going to have to fix the whole rest of the house, get that foundation reinforced.
To add that weight.
It's not typically something flippers like to do because there's too many unknowns in it. So looking for unused square footage is a really big way to find that equity.
Yeah. One caveat to that, though, we had Raleigh Pappas on one of our episodes. We nickname him the Dormer King because you can add up to 200 square feet with a dormer. So in Seattle, you can get an over-the-counter permit called STFI permit very quickly within days or a couple weeks at the most. If you're span, so if you're opening up a space under or 14 feet or less. So if it's smaller than that and it's under 200 square feet that you're adding, you can get that permit very quickly. So if you're buying a house that has like a pretty steep attic space that you can stand in, but it's, you can't go very far on the sides because it's so steep, you could potentially add that dormer, pop it up, and add a lot more square footage to the house without getting those super long permits that take forever.
That's a good point. So it's about finding a way to add the value. And a lot of times it's either unfinished square footage or underutilized square footage. And so those are the key points. Obviously, there's a lot of houses that just look old and just the cosmetic. But the real value is going to come when you change either the layout or you add some additional space to the house.
Okay. And as far as like, I know we touched on this when we talked about what kind of money you'll be using to get into the flip, but I think that directly correlates with the timeline. So what is a typical timeline or an ideal timeline to get into the flip it, and be done with it?
And exit.
Yeah, good question. So the first thing that's the easiest to find out is the time that you might be on the market. So people forget this all the time. When they're doing their timelines, they are not thinking about you have to be on the market for a certain amount of time, your house, once it's done. Then you have to wait a month, typically, for it to actually close. You're still paying.
Once you actually get an offer and you accept it, it's going to be another 30 days on average before it's actually closed and you actually don't keep making that monthly payment.
Yeah.
Correct. So you want to look at that area again in your ARV search. How many days on market are these houses? There's some neighborhoods that
average?
it's like pretty typical for things to be on 20, 30 days. And it's like they end up selling for the list price, but it just takes longer.
A while. Yeah.
So if that's the case, I got to add a month of market time and a month of closing time to your timeline.
Right.
The next question is, how big is this rehab
What's
going to
the
be?
scope of rehab?
Because some flips take 10 to 12 weeks, which is super fast, and some flips take a year. I would say the average flip takes 6 months. That seems to be like the typical thing. If it's a much bigger like layout change, you might be looking at like 8 months. But some people get it done super fast. So it's hard to say, but I would say average is about 6 months. But definitely look at those days on market. Add that on to whatever your construction time is. And then, as an agent, like even the moment they're done with construction, you got to clean, you got to get photos, you got to get staging, you got to get your marketing prepped. So that's another like couple weeks.
Yeah, or a week or two.
Or a week at least. Yeah. So these are some of and it's always going to be a little longer than you think.
Yeah,
I mean, it would be
always hiccups.
Great to have everything go smooth and be the perfect timeline, but typically you're at least a week late most of the time.
At least.
Okay. Yeah. That's good to know. Okay. So what are the common pitfalls to avoid when flipping a house for the first time? Some like each of you pick a big glaring one that you remember.
Hiring the wrong contractor.
Yeah. That's number one.
Number one.
Yeah. So
number one.
I feel like
million.
this one really hurt.
Yeah.
Number 1 million. Yeah. Do you have a different one?
Taking on too big the very first time.
That's a good one. I would also say having the wrong ARV.
Yeah.
Because you could do everything right, and if your ARV is wrong, when you go to sell it, you're not going to make any money, which is going to feel like a failure anyway.
Well, yeah, that would be a bummer.
So I would say those are like the top 3, but picking the wrong contractor is going to destroy your
Why
deal.
is that like such a big flop? I mean, I can make my inferences, obviously, but like maybe for people who don't know why.
Yeah. So, for example, our last flip, we interviewed 17 different contractors. It took a long time to find the one that we chose. They can really screw you over in lots of different ways, both in cost and time. And that's what it really boils down to. It's like, are they going to add all these change orders, which you'll have a scope of work that you need to create up front.
That's your list of things you want done at the house to make it nice.
And this is how you can, as a first-time flipper, it's a lot of work. And especially if you don't really know what you're doing, this is why it's really nice to partner with someone that does, to help you build that scope of work out. Because you can go, well, all I'm doing is just opening up that wall between the kitchen and the dining room. Okay, yeah, that is all you're doing. But is that a load-bearing wall? Is it a span larger than 14 feet? Are there some ducts, like air ducts, like heating and cooling ducts, or electrical or something else going on in that, plumbing, whatever it is, in that wall? Because there's a domino effect with a lot of the things that you're choosing to do. So if you don't have an experienced contractor that knows how to do this, that can really hurt you in financial and time. And time is money, as we all know.
Yeah, I mean, the contractor can just there's, not to be scary, but there's lots of stories of contractors just taking the deposit and running away. I mean, it's just, that's the reality of the scenario that happens more than you would think.
Awful.
There's stories of people, even experienced flippers, hiring fake contractors who used fake names. And
I didn't even know this was a thing until you just said that. I hate that. What is it? Like, what's the...
How do you prevent that? How you prevent that is by looking up on L&I, making sure that the number, you want their contractor license number, you want their bond information. You can actually go online, double check that they are who they say they are, that they have their license, that it is currently active. And then you want a list of people that have worked with them in the past, and you want to actually call those people and talk to them. And you want to go walk a job site of theirs that is currently under construction or is almost finished to kind of see the quality of their work and make sure that they actually are a contractor.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's some of the things you can do to help yourself. But yeah, the wrong contractor is going to mess up your budget and mess up your timeline.
Okay. Well, so you hire a contractor, but you say you have to have your, your list of things that you want done. How do you accurately estimate what you're going to be paying for the changes that like the updates that you want to make, basically, including labor and materials? Like, is all of that included?
Yeah. So this is
the biggest thing.
This is the thing that I think is the hardest for new flippers. So when
not new flippers,
not even
for
new
everyone.
flippers,
Yeah.
Ultimately, the goal is to have a document that says every single thing you could potentially have wrong with a house, and then to have a price next to that. Like on average, it costs this much to switch out a window, and this is how much the material costs, and this is how much the labor costs. That is the ideal thing you would want to eventually fill in for yourself as a flipper. So that when you walk through a house, you have your big list and you're just clicking off things like, all right, it has 20 windows. I have this many doors. I have this many this. So that's how you would ideally do it. When you're first starting, it's really hard because you don't know how much a door costs. You don't know how much a window costs. And so that's the annoying part, is either you can partner with somebody who has these things and then give it to you, or if you're just starting and you don't have that access, you can have contractors walk through. Like we had 17 come through, and you can just ask them questions. Hey, how much does it usually typically cost for, what's your cost for a door? How much does it cost you to install a door? And then And then the next guy, you're going to ask 3 more questions to. And the next guy, you're going to ask 3 more questions to. And you're building that list for yourself. So a water heater costs this, and a new panel costs this, and
and a roof costs this, and all these different things. It's very difficult to build this out. Another option you can do too is to pay a mentor. There's a ton of different mentors. In our area, we are so lucky and blessed that we have some of the top real estate investors and flippers in the nation in our backyard that have training courses that you can pay a lot of money to join. They're not cheap, but you can save yourself that much, if not more, by paying to be a part of those.
Also, if you have a broker like us who works with a lot of flippers, like we have these created already, we know how much these things cost. So you don't have to go out there and create it yourself if you don't want to, but you also can get bids from these contractors, have them itemize it though.
That's the big thing. You need it to be itemized. Otherwise, it's just going to be like, well, this is going to cost $200,000 to do this. And you're like,
but why?
Cool. What are you doing for that $200,000?
So you want them to separate everything out.
Which is a pain, and they don't want to do that because it takes them a lot of time.
Yeah.
I get that.
And they don't necessarily have the time to do that.
Right.
Contractors are good at doing the work generally.
Yeah.
That's why they do that. That's why they get into that line of work. They are generally not great at making
running
bids,
a business,
running
like
a business,
the running business things.
Yeah, even asking for payment. We've had we've like had our last contractor. We
shoved a check in his face. We're like, you need to take this money. You haven't asked for money for a long time. This is how much you need to take.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm like, that doesn't not compute.
Exactly.
I'm like,
it's funny how that
money
works.
for services. Thank you.
You would think that'd be top of mind for them all, but it's not.
Especially with them fake contractors stealing
Well,
money.
that's a good way to know you don't have a fake one when they're not hounding you for payment.
Because they're too busy working.
Yeah.
So what permits and inspections do you typically need when starting a flip?
This is such a hard question.
Yes. I bet there's a lot.
So
that's what I feel.
Yeah. I'm going to start with the reality is there's some flippers who don't get permits, and there's some flippers who get permits on some jobs and not on others. Mm-hmm. That's just the reality. Mm-hmm. So when you look, it doesn't mean the work wasn't done well. Actually, most flippers try to do the work up to code so that if they ever do get caught, then they won't have to redo the work. Yeah. So I'm going to preface with that. Don't feel like that means, oh no, these houses are scary. No, it's typically they do it well because if they get caught, they don't want to redo it. Mm-hmm. So the reason they don't get permits is because of timeline. It takes longer. When you're going through the permit process, it's going to add, and this is another thing you're going to have to add on. If you're like, I don't feel comfortable not getting permits, I'm going to do the process the right way, you're going to add on some time. Mm-hmm. So how much time?
And the reason why is because when you're getting permits, you have to wait for the permit, and you can't do anything until that comes. Well, you can sometimes, but you can't do what you're
you can't really do anything until you get your permit.
Ideally, in an ideal world, make a timeline to work on things that don't need permits while you wait for your permits.
So you're not really supposed to demo even until you have your permit. I think you can get a demo permit. Yeah. We haven't actually had this scenario happen because typically we try to stay with our projects in the STFI, subject to field inspection type of permit.
In the city of Seattle. Yeah.
In the city of Seattle. So there's some permits that if you're doing some major changes to like the layout or the structure of the house, you're going to need a more intense kind of permit. The permits we typically like to do are the over-the-counter STFI permit.
Yep.
So we usually get those pretty fast, I think within like a week or so of submitting. So we don't need to start doing anything until...
we can wait a week.
It does take longer throughout the process though, because let's say you're doing plumbing and you're doing electrical, those are separate things. They need to come in and they need to look at the work.
The city inspector actually has to come out. And so even though the work's ready to be signed off, you might have to wait 2, 3, 4, 10 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks for the inspector to come out.
That's not that long. No, it's usually within
hopefully it's
3 days or so.
Mm-hmm. Usually it's not that long, but it could be. Mm-hmm. And so you have to not do work leading up to that. You can do other work. You just can't finish, like if it's plumbing, you can't put drywall up and cover it all until it's been signed off.
So they give you permission to put the drywall up. They're like, you have permission to cover now. Mm-hmm. And so there's
you have to do that if plumbing and electric is involved, correct?
Correct. Okay. Yeah. And so they also, this happens even with good contractors. They might come out and be like, oh, there's a tiny little issue that you need to fix. So then now you can't move to the next step because the plumber needs to come back out. Plumbers and electricians are like the kings of the flipping contractor scenario. And so they are often not available like the next day, and they'll come out when they can, and then they fix it. And then you have to wait for the inspector to come back out. So it's like, you can see how this can create like a snowball of timeline.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think for people's like first deal, I would avoid those really intense layout change, structural change type projects, because you are going to sit there and wait for 4, 5, 6, maybe months for a permit to be able to do what you need to do. That might include, if you're doing bigger stuff, that's going to include retrofitting too, probably. So you just need to be aware of that change.
So if you're doing a project that's mostly cosmetic, like one we were just looking at actually, and you do know you want to make some system changes, like an electric change and a plumbing change, but you're not going to tear down any walls. Let's say you're just switching out galvanized pipes for PEX pipes. Is that something that you need to get a permit for?
Yes.
Yeah, and you can get those STFI over-the-counter quick permits for that.
Okay,
and
because you're not tearing
the plumber will get
down.
it for you. They'll know exactly what to do, how to do it, how quickly to do it, and all that stuff.
And the same with like an electric box, if you're updating the electrical box and the wiring, obviously in the house.
So in the city of Seattle too, this is a good thing to say. If you're upgrading the panel to a larger panel, it could take Seattle City Light or Seattle Public Utilities is known to take a long time to get upgraded wiring to the house, or even new wiring if you're doing new construction to the property. So you got to factor that in and lean on your electrician for the current timelines because they can get longer or shorter depending on how busy they are.
But you'd be surprised. I think a lot of people, when they're looking at cosmetic projects, they don't really realize that if you're changing even slight things, like maybe I want the oven over here instead of where it is. Now you're changing the electrical layout of this house. So there's a lot of chain reaction from even cosmetic updates that you don't really realize. Like, oh, we want the light switch here now, or we're adding a light fixture, so now we need a different light. There's just a lot of little tiny things that tend to snowball even with cosmetic updates.
And again, lean on your hired expert to help you with that, because the plumber and the electrician are going to know that stuff, or they should know that stuff.
Okay.
Yep.
So, how do you guys suggest finding reliable electricians, plumbers, things like that?
This is the
Day
hardest.
laborers,
This
perhaps.
is the hardest part of flipping. Hands down, finding people to do the work at your project is the hardest part of flipping, and finding them at the right price.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
you can
that's-
find people, but they might be very expensive.
Yeah, this is how flippers make money, is their ability to get things done for less money than the typical homeowner. This is why they are creating this profit, is through that. So finding a general contractor is one of the most difficult things, and it continues and will always be probably one of the most difficult parts of flipping, because even if you use somebody, you find them and they're great, what tends to happen is after, and I've heard this from a lot of people, after a couple years, all of a sudden prices start to go up, or quality starts to go down, or they start to not quite do it as fast as they used to do. And so then you got to find somebody else who can do it.
Yeah, you have to have a bench of contractors or subcontractors ready to go. So you're constantly building this bench of people to do the work.
Yeah. So if you're a client of ours, you could ask us for a referral. We can help out giving you some ideas of who you might be able to work with. You can also ask other investors. They might not tell you, but you could try.
Yeah.
Oftentimes that's very close to the chest, and they don't want to,
Because it's hard to find them.
them.
It's a lot of work.
You don't want to. It's like when you find a really great restaurant and you always want to get a seat, or a great hairdresser. Yeah.
If you do see people, I mean, I've done this. Christian knows, he's very annoyed by this, but when we're out and we see people, like a work truck, and people are just like standing out chatting, I go and talk to them. Like, hi, what do you guys do? Blah, 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 blah. And then I ask too, you can ask the subs. So a subcontractor is like, there's a main general contractor. Okay. This is the person you hire to do like the whole job, and they coordinate with all these subcontractors. So the plumber, the electrician, the HVAC,
They're the
tile
ones
guy,
hiring all of them and bringing them and
coordinating the job.
Yep.
So you can often ask like the tile guy or the drywallers or the framers or whatever, who do you guys like to work with as a general? Who do you enjoy working with? And then you'll get a pretty good idea of who a good general contractor is based on what the subcontractors say.
That's
Who they
smart.
like.
Or you can even get the subcontractors info so that you can hire them for the next job.
Well, totally.
Yeah.
That too. Yes.
So it goes both ways.
But it's the general that's really, really hard to find. Plumbers and electricians, yes, but the general is like the key.
Well, yeah, because they're kind of like the ringmaster of everything that you want to really lean on and trust. So that makes sense.
Yeah, and I wouldn't recommend, this is another thing flippers do sometimes, is we did this, I wouldn't recommend it. I was the GC for our very first flip. We did a dado in the back too, so I obviously didn't build that. And it was a very minor
It was super
flip,
cosmetic.
but even in that case, I learned the lessons that like oftentimes there's holes in like what's happening in the project. So maybe I have the tile guy coming and I have the guys putting the cabinet in, but then there's a transition piece that I need in between these things. And I don't even have anybody to do that. So then I have to go pay exorbitant amounts for like somebody to come do this like small little thing. And so oftentimes it takes you a lot of time and you don't have necessarily the connections with all the subs. And then you're also going to find that you just have all these missing little tiny things. You're like, who's doing this? I don't even know who does that.
Or what that is even. Yeah.
So one of the biggest pieces of this, I feel like they're all big pieces, honestly, but when you're done with the flip, or as you're finishing things up, how is the best way to get everything kind of wrapped up and ready for market, ready to sell? What are those, important pieces? I think I know the main one, and it's finding an agent
I was gonna
that
say,
can do that for you.
Also, the last
punch list items.
the last 5% of any project, 5-10%, whatever you want to call it, those little punch list things, like you said, they take forever. It really shouldn't.
Always.
It doesn't seem like it should because they're simple little cosmetic things, but they can take forever. So realize that you've got 95% of the entire rehab done. Now you have all these little things like weird trim that doesn't match the other one in the other room and just weird little things.
Yeah. So I would say what we like to do when we're pretty close to being done, we like to go out and blue tape, and your agent can also do this. So if you hired
Lean on
us,
your agent,
we would come out and we would do this. Christian is scary at blue taping. Like the whole place looks
like
polka
a
dot.
Jackson Pollock painting when I'm done with my.
But he notices a lot of things. Buyers, he knows buyers will notice this because it's on the corner and their eyesight's going to go right here. And you don't want somebody to say, buyers to go, oh, I don't want to buy this house because I see this tiny little thing.
Stupid
and so
little
the work must not
And
be
they
done
will
well,
do that.
which you guys know from showing buyers. They will
100%.
make this inference from the dumbest, tiniest little thing, but it makes sense because they can't see what's behind the wall. So they see this little thing and they're like, oh, something's wrong here.
Something must have been done to, like, they cheaped out here.
Correct.
What else did they cheap out on?
Yeah.
I mean,
Creates a spiral of
it
thoughts.
really does.
Yeah.
It's not good.
So you want a blue tape, and then we like this app. I think it's called Punch List, where you just take a picture of the item. Let's say you're missing trim somewhere. You take a picture of it. You say what room it's in, and then you write
what
out
needs to be done.
what you want to be done, and then you can share this with your contractor. Generally, contractors and subcontractors don't like any kind of tech solution. You just need to print it and bring it over there.
Yep.
I don't know why this is the case,
I
but
don't know why either. But it's also good because then the GC will sometimes just like tear off the page for each room and just tape it on the wall and say, this is what needs to be done. And you could do this as well. You don't have to lean on your general for this, but you can do this as well. That's also a really good tip for up front. So if you have like a bathroom, for instance, you have a floor tile, you have a shower pan tile, potentially, you have a wall tile for the shower, and then maybe you have a vanity that's a double sink with a different, not tile, but like a quartz or something like that. You should, to eliminate headaches up front, print out exactly what goes where. So have a picture of the floor tile and say floor tile.
And then how it's going to be laid, because tile's the one thing that you cannot. You can undo it, but it's really freaking hard to undo it. Yeah. So you want to make sure to specify, I want this laid this way. And you can look up all the different ways things are laid. But like you want to tell them and show a visual of the way that you want that tile so that, and go check that day. When they're doing tile, go over there.
Yep.
And be like, do you have any questions? Do you want to talk about grout colors? Like that's the day to make sure you visit if you want to double check, like especially early on if you have time. Go the day they lay tile. But yeah, having printouts is so powerful to make sure things are done right.
It eliminates headaches and questions, and it's going to make your job easier long term because they're going to call you with a bunch of questions, or they're going to assume. Generally, when they assume, it's incorrect.
Okay.
You don't want that, and it's like Shannon said, it's expensive to undo tile, or it could be expensive to have it in there the ugly way that you didn't want, because now buyers are like, God, that's ugly tile. Why did they do it like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like to pick my own grout colors. You don't always want to let your tile guy choose. General contractors are not designers typically, so you want to specify how you want things done and what colors you want and what you want so that things turn out well.
That said, you might even hire a designer to help you with that.
That was going to be another question. I know I've had this asked of me, and I'm like, I don't know, because I have not yet flipped a house. But if it's seeming like the house is going to be mostly a cosmetic flip, is it more beneficial rather than getting a general contractor? Is it more beneficial to get a designer?
I think it's going to depend on your skill set and what you're comfortable with.
Okay. I mean, obviously, if there's no big systems to be replaced, maybe a designer would be the more helpful person, but
you typically, especially if you're first starting, you probably want a general contractor no matter what. Yep. Even if you're just doing cosmetic stuff. Because like I said, there's going to be these little tiny things
that you don't know.
That you don't know. You don't have somebody to do that finish work for you. Designers, I think, are great. We actually have one that we can refer out. She's awesome. and it has helped us with a lot of our projects when we need it. Some of them I design and some I let her design. It just depends on what project it is and how busy I am at the time. I think if you feel comfortable that you can go on like Pinterest or Houzz or whatever, or even at your comps and find a bathroom that you like or a kitchen that you like, and you feel like you could recreate this design, people do. I do that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, this looks nice. I'll just do that. And that's totally
inspiration
normal.
photo is what that's called.
Yeah.
And you can even go to a store like Floor and Decor with your inspiration photo and say, can you help me recreate this? And they'll do that and then say, I need it cheaper. And then they'll go, okay, well, it's not going to look exactly the same, but you could do it like this. And they'll work with you.
Or just tell them your budget.
Experts down there to help you with that.
Okay.
And that's a free
I've
service.
definitely brought photos to them before and been like, hey, what's the closest tile to this that's under $6 a square foot?
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
So here's kind of a curveball question that I did not write down, but is flipping something that you guys, I know you said you haven't been doing it that long, but is it something that you guys like doing, and do you foresee yourself doing it for a long time?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Good question. I think early on, so we did our first numerous projects were a house flip and a dadu build. The dadu build, I think we enjoyed more and didn't enjoy the flipping part as much. But I think over time, as we've gotten more skilled and just understand the process better, I think we like flipping more and more.
Yeah, agreed.
I definitely think we'll keep doing it.
Yeah.
Do you want to keep building the dadus in the back too, or
Yeah,
do you
for
feel
sure.
like
We
you
love
just
building
like
the
doing
dadus.
one or the other?
So for us, we hire a general contractor to build the dadu. So it's honestly mostly hands off, other than design. You don't really do much. We'll check in and do our due diligence throughout the process, but
A lot of the dadu work is done prior to breaking ground. Once it breaks ground, you're like, we've
Kinda
planned
hands
everything
off.
out.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
know where
Pretty
every light
simple.
fixture is going. Everything's pretty much done. Flipping is so much more unknown. So you open a wall and you just don't know what's back there, and you don't know what the costs are going to be with that. You don't know anything. And so I think we felt uncomfortable with that early on, just the unknowns of it. But I think we've been through it enough. We feel comfortable at this
that
point.
we can solve the problems. And this is just like anything in life.
Yeah.
The more complex problems you can solve, the more money you can make. So if you're comfortable and you force yourself to get comfortable with solving some very hard problems, you can make a lot more money in life. That's just the way it is. So at least that's my opinion. So the more knowledge you get, the easier it's going to be. And
Yeah.
it just comes with experience a lot of times, or just empowering yourself with that knowledge.
Yeah, I think with flipping, one of the things of why people prefer flipping over new development, just in case anybody's kind of trying to think between those two, flipping is a lot faster.
Yes.
And so it's a little bit less risky because it's just so much faster. So the market can't change that much in it could, but like 4 months, how much it changes versus a year and a half, how much it changes. There is definitely more risk in there. And then flipping is also just a lot easier to find. So new construction or dadu deals are just not that easy to find anymore. There's a lot of people looking for them. So there's lots of deals we let go of because they weren't a dadu deal where we could take them now if we wanted to.
Yeah, because we're more experienced and more willing to do it.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for coming in today, Shannon and Christian.
Of course.
Thanks for having us, Joanna.
It's my pleasure, guys. I hope that answers everybody's questions about flips.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I found that all very helpful and a lot to think about, which, for me, I was already thinking about, but this helped get even more clear on different parts of the process for me.
Yeah, it's a lot. Flipping is not easy. People say it's easy and they try to make it sound easy, and all of the courses and products you can buy online about flipping, they make it sound like you can do this, you can learn this in a weekend, or you can pay $10,000 and we'll teach you everything you need to know. May or may not be true, so buyer beware. But if you work with a good real estate agent, you can get a lot of help, and they can, like our team, we have a lot of experience myself, but also Varun on our team, great real estate investor in his own right, but also can help assist with that as well. So,
having the right team in place can definitely lower all of the risks that play into flipping. Yeah. But it's so fun. And I just have to say, like, flipping, one of the reasons I do really like it versus new construction is that it's so, seeing it go from being really ugly to being really beautiful.
Yeah.
The before and afters are so
It is
fun.
a really it feels so good. Yeah. And it's so fun to like see that transition. So
that's why I can't wait to do it.
I know. That's the part that makes me just go, oh, I love it.
Yeah.
And it is like, it's funny because you start to get attached to these houses a little bit. You try not to, but you do. You put a lot of
Don't fall in love with your flips.
No, don't. But you put a lot of heart and soul into and ideas and time and energy into these projects, and then you sell it and you're like, oh, I don't get to go over to that house anymore.
I know. I usually like to go over and I'm like, bye. Christian's like, you're annoying,
weird.
but bye.
I might be the worst at it because I get attached to the houses my clients buy now. So I can't even imagine doing it all from, just beginning to end.
Yeah. Although then you get the check, you're like, yep,
that was worth it.
peace
Okay,
out.
love it so much. Yeah.
At least hopefully you're like, yeah, I actually
Oh my
made
God.
money.
Yeah. I don't want to be the mistake person.
No.
We won't let you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Lean on us. We'll help you out. Yeah.
We'll make a documentary for that one. How about that?
No, exactly. And
Joanna's
that's kind of
first
what
flip.
that's kind of what we did with the one that we did for the TV show. It's really from start to finish going over all of the pitfalls and all of the things we had to solve throughout the process. It's a fun journey.
That was our first solo
flip.
just a flip, no construction. So
Yeah. We had done cosmetic and smaller flips before, but they were with building a dad in the back.
yeah, so it's definitely different.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Awesome in Seattle podcast. If you are an inspiring flipper and want to, get some help, please reach out to us. We would love to set you up for success, help you along the path, and be your agent to help guide you. So you can go to our website, awesomenossum.com. You can schedule a time to chat with us. That's probably the easiest way. Or you can just email us. All of our emails are right on the website. And that's it for this episode of the Awesome in Seattle podcast. Joanna, Shannon, thank you so much for joining us. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Awesome in Seattle podcast. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.